Welcome everyone to Aging Backward Summit, growing younger as we get older. Today we have a very special guest, Dr. Randall Hansen. Uh, how would you like me to address you today? As Dr. Hansen, as Randall? Dr.
Randall's
Randall?
fine, yeah.
Okay. So Randall, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your background and what you're up to now?
Sure. I probably like you, David, I got into the wellness area because of my own health and concerns about what were the best things to be doing for that health. And so my wellness journey or health journey started about 23 years ago. And it was actually also inspired by a quote that I read that said that refined sugar was the greatest evil to ever enter the US food system. And at the time, I thought, come on, the greatest evil to enter the US household? And that quote and my own health just started this journey. And one of the things I still recommend to people today, the first thing I did was I quit sugary sodas. And in the first month of just doing that, only just doing that, I lost something like 15 pounds, 10, 15 pounds. And I thought, wow, maybe there is something to this refined sugar thing. And then, of course, diving into that research and seeing just how the sugar industry manipulated data and manipulated us as consumers. And so over those years, I focused a lot on health and wellness and writing articles, not doing that much. But then about 5.5, 6 years ago, I just realized we are in such a health and healing crisis. And I felt like not everyone was looking at it. People had different silos. Like one group was maybe just focused on sugar, one was on seed oils, one was on exercise, and one was on farming. And I thought, well, wait a second, all these things are interrelated. No one's done this. And so I ended up writing 3 books. I never imagined even writing one, let alone three, but I just felt like I needed to get this information out there. And it's not my research, my theories, it's the research that's been in the field, and it's changed so dramatically in the last 15 years. We're finally starting to see the results of theories that we had, but now we're seeing the research to back that up. And so today I'm just still on that quest to just help everyone, find health and healing and ideally reverse their biological age through this process.
Uh, Why don't you talk a little bit about the healing revolution? That's your third book, correct?
Yes.
And
Yes.
what I like about it, because other than I contributed a chapter, is the timeline you gave on
Yeah.
the history of food and what they did to it. I was very impressed with, especially learning in 1977 that high fructose corn syrup was um, entered or uh, put into our food because it didn't exist before then.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I didn't plan on doing this timeline, but again, as I started looking at these different silos, I thought, well, no one's talking about glyphosate in this area. No one's talking about high fructose corn syrup, or no one's talking about how we changed wheat dramatically. And so, yeah, if we look at, we talk about the 60s and 70s as being kind of a turbulent era in terms of our culture, going from the Vietnam War and the hippies of the 60s to just a total change in the 70s. But we can also see that same thing happening in food and wellness and nutrition and farming. All these changes in the 60s and 70s. Um, in the 60s, like I said, wheat changed to a hybrid wheat that was durum wheat mixed with a goat grass, and so that could be part of the reason that people have more issues with bread and wheat these days than in the past. Of course, glyphosate's another issue we can get to. Also in the 60s, animal production changed. We went from most chickens, goats, cows on small farms to these massive feedlots where the animals are pumped with antibiotics and fed unnatural foods to fatten them up. Again, it's all about profit making money. Soybean oil became the number one in the 60s, became the number one selling vegetable oil, which I think always funny when we call it vegetable oil. And in fact, today, those numbers are still so high. We consume about 80 pounds of soybean oil per person per year. Again, hopefully most people in your audience are already aware of food and health and are not eating as much ultra processed foods, which almost all contain soybean oil and vegetable oil. And then the 60s are also the time of the fake Harvard study that was sponsored by the sugar industry that was, again, about to have results that say sugar is wonderful and keep eating it. So yeah, that was a crazy era. And then 70s, as you mentioned, brought high fructose corn syrup, which never existed before and became prevalent in so many different foods. Glyphosate was developed and put on the market in the 70s, still used today, called Roundup in commercial uses. Margarine became the highest selling ever in the 70s, beating butter by a long margin. I think we were consuming about 15 pounds of margarine a year in the 70s.
Just out of curiosity,
Yeah.
do you know who created or with the margarine?
No, I don't know that.
It was Germans during World War II because they needed a substitute for their troops for food. And so that's where I read that's where it was developed. I found that fascinating. Aspartame was also introduced in the late 1970s, if I recall correctly.
Yes, yes. Yeah, so we had introduction of artificial sweeteners as well. And so, and the last thing in the 70s that happened is George McGovern a senator chaired a Senate committee on health, and the number one guideline that came out of that was fat is horrible and dangerous and avoided at all costs. And that, along with Ansel Keys, set up our false food pyramid where we have fat, no, don't touch fat, and but carbs are great and of any type, high simple carbs or complex carbs didn't matter. And so yeah, we have this background that uh, and so the timeline was I hoped the timeline, I thank you for that. I hope the timeline would be uh, if no one else read anything else in the book, just seeing that timeline would illuminate them to the idea that, hey, maybe all this talk about the systems being broken, there's some truth in it if I look at this timeline.
Well, they can trace back to the late 1970s, early 1980s when the obesity crisis started,
Yeah,
because that's when they started adulterating the food. And
yeah,
that's what I tell people. It's not the food we're eating today, it's what they've done to the food.
yeah.
One of the things also was Olestra,
Oh my
which
gosh,
is
yeah,
now Olean.
yeah,
And again, aspartame started as a drug. From drug research, they found they can make it a sweetener. And same
yep,
thing with Olestra, started by Cyril as a drug.
yep.
And then Procter and Gamble did it to reduce fat. So anytime you see fat-free, run.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I remember those snack wells back in the day. But you're right. The tobacco companies, came in the 80s and bought out Nabisco, Kraft, and brought in their experts to get this bliss point that we talk about, these hyper palatable foods that you literally just can't eat one. So yeah, the apple pie today is nothing like the apple pie from the 60s when your grandmother made it or whatever, because the food has changed that dramatically.
Yeah, I like seeing those little posts sometimes on LinkedIn where it says, "I ate this as a kid and I'm fine." And it's like, no, you didn't, because if you look at the ingredients back in the before 1980s and you look at the ingredients today, before 1980s, maybe five, six ingredients or
Yep.
fewer, and
Yep.
today 10, 15, 20 ingredients, same
Yeah.
product.
Yeah.
The example I use often is Gatorade.
Yeah.
The original Gatorade came out in the late 70s and it had five ingredients. Today has over 13, and the only original two ingredients are water and sugar.
Well, it's the same thing. I use the McDonald's French fries, the same thing. Back in the day, it was first of all fried in a mostly tallow fat, not a seed oil, and then it was just potatoes and salt, three things. And now they inject it with various things to protect it and preserve it and make sure it gets that perfect color that fits that. And so, yeah, it's not the same French fries you ate as a kid if you're, a certain age.
I am a certain age, and I remember working at McDonald's in high school. And I can tell you, I was working there at the time that we would actually peel the potatoes, slice
Wow.
the potatoes, blanch them in the oil, and then put them in the refrigerator overnight. Next day is when you would deep fry them. And I was there at the time that they
Wow.
stopped doing that and brought in the frozen French fries. And I remember one of the crew members saying, I would never eat those. I said, why? And she says, do you know how much preservatives are in there and what they need to do to make sure that when we put the frozen French fries in the hot oil, that it doesn't explode or splatter? And I said,
Wow.
never thought of it. So even though they taste great, they're not healthy for us. Just
Yeah.
out of curiosity, have you read Sugar Blues by William Duffy?
I don't think that's one of the few I think I have not read.
That's what started my journey back in the
Okay.
1970s. It came out in 1976, I believe. Um, it is more relevant today than back then. Still, it's a
Okay.
classic book, a lot of great information. But yeah, I would recommend that. That's interesting. So, what is your PhD in?
It's in philosophy. And so I just look at myself as always being kind of this trained researcher. Again, not necessarily doing the research in food and nutrition because that's not my specialty, but in interpreting and reading it and be able to transmit it. Uh, like I love Metabolical by Dr. Robert Lustig, but he goes down in some rabbit holes that are so technical, which are wonderful for the people to prove his point. But for the average reader, I think they would put it down because it gets, he starts going way down in the mitochondria and things like that. And so that's one of the goals with I guess my skill set is just taking this complex set of information and trying to explain it in a way that doesn't go down too many rabbit holes so people can digest it and then incorporate it into their lives.
No pun
Um,
intended.
no pun intended. No.
So, how do you think that the food affects our aging process today?
Oh, well, again, depending on what the people are eating, but again, I'm hoping your viewers are, um, if they're coming to the summit, are a little already on that path. But I look at the standard American diet of all these ultra processed foods, and whether it's the sugar, and it's so funny. There's a debate sometimes among us: is it the sugar? Is it the seed oil? Is it the chemical additives? Or all the above? We could do a multiple choice question. And I just think that all whatever it is, all these elements, because we're all unhealthy, the preservatives. I think what's happening is it's killing us so slowly that people don't realize it, and so they're like, well, yeah, I've had someone said to me, I have had a Big Mac every Sunday for the last whatever of my life, 30 years of my life, and I'm fine. And it's like, okay, but when was the last time you got your blood work checked and that kind of thing? And so I think if the goal of this summit is to get people saying we can reverse these things. That's the great hope of all of this, is that no matter where you are in this journey right now, many things are still reversible, so we can pull back from those from that ledge of those chronic illnesses and use these tips that you're going to get from all these experts in the summit about food, about lifestyle, and how that can actually make your biological age or health age younger than your biological age.
I guess I'm exhibit A for that. As you know, some of the audience may know, I got my wake up call at age 61 in July 2016 when the doctor said, based on my lab results, and that I was fat, had a 95% chance for a fatal heart attack. And that's when I changed my lifestyle and eating habits, lost 50 pounds in 4 months. More importantly, I kept it off. And then I hiked up Mount Kilimanjaro in June of 2022 at age 67. So age should not be a reason for people
Yeah.
not to begin a health journey.
Yeah, I remember you had told me your age when you shared your story for the book, but the other day when we were talking, you reminded me and you said, you're gonna be 70. I was like, no, there's no absolute way. I mean, you do not look anywhere near that age. So major kudos. And you're right. So that means, yeah, you don't have to start at 30. You could be starting at 60. It's fine. Just start. That's the key thing.
That's it. I have a little, for lack of a better word, note that I keep in front of my computer here, and it says, attitude is everything. The older I get, the healthier I become. The healthier I become, the more motivated I am to be healthier. And my philosophy is I'm growing younger as I get older.
Ooh.
And that's why I wanted other people to realize that there's still time to reverse some of the damage done by food. The other thing is, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but people over age 50, 80% of them are either a type 2 diabetic or pre-diabetic. And if they're pre-diabetic, what it means is they don't change their eating habits and lifestyle. In 7 years, they'll be a full-blown type 2 diabetic. What's even scarier is they're saying that probably a third of the people out there in the population, US population, are unaware that they're even a type 2 by diabetic.
Yeah. Yeah. The numbers are just so scary. 9 out of 10 of us are metabolically unhealthy. One of the five factors are off, and sometimes more than one. I was just thinking, hypertension is one of those factors. And I was just thinking that, again, statistics show that more than 50% of the entire population, regardless of age, has high blood pressure. And to me, that or insulin or pre-diabetic are both kind of those canaries in the coal mine. Like we call hypertension the silent killer because you don't know it, and then all of a sudden you are in serious trouble. And so, yeah, I think people think that weight. Oh, I had someone say this the other day. Well, I still fit into the clothes I wore in high school, so I'm great. And I said, well, you can be thin, you can and not be healthy. So it's not just that people that are have overweight or obese, although that's certainly a risk factor, but you can look healthy and not be. So it is imperative to start thinking about these things, especially people over 50.
Oh, you're exactly right, because you don't know if that person is using drugs, alcohol, smoking a lot of cigarettes. You don't know why they're thin. And they may, like you said, be thin. That doesn't mean they're healthy.
Right.
And so I agree, people need to get lab work done, see where their blood is, and see what's going on so they have a baseline of where they're starting from.
Yeah. Agreed.
What do you think are some of the tips you can provide the audience to, oh, let me rephrase it this way. When I wake up in the morning, I have the luxury of having no aches and pain. I feel great. However, a lot of my colleagues and friends my age are always talking about their aches and pains, whether it be their knees, their hips, their shoulders, their back. Um, and I just look at them and then they look at me. It's like, well, what are you doing? I'm taking care of my body, number one,
Yeah.
because I don't know if it was Jim Rohn or Dr. Bob Martin who said, if you wear out your body, where else are you going to live?
Yeah, exactly.
So, what advice would you give someone who's maybe 50, 60, 70, to start changing their lifestyle a little bit?
Yeah. Let me just add quickly. My brother, when he turned 50, he's the older brother. He joked, well, he didn't joke. I thought it was a joke at first, but then it turns out not. He said, "Oh, when after 50, it all goes downhill. I wake up in pain every morning." Just like you're talking about, of course, he's on a high sugar diet. I keep trying to tell him, get off that. That inflammation is driving those aches and pains. So yeah, so I think there's some really, well, I'll say they're easy because I've been through them, but they're not necessarily that easy. But the first one I would say is clear out your pantry of all the white stuff, what I call the white stuff. So that's all the refined sugar, that's the white flour, it's the white rice, all these simple carbs that are, in my mind, leading directly to insulin resistance and inflammation in your body, and then leading to diabetes and down that path. So that's number one. And the good news is for most people, the sugar cravings stop after a couple weeks. For some people, and I think it's only about 10% of the population, but there's about 10% that are addicted to sugar. And they might need a coach or a little extra work to do that. But for the 90, the rest of us, it'll be a little hard. Little cravings will come at you, but then don't cheat. Just try to go cold turkey on the sugar, especially. And then amazingly, your taste buds will change. It's like if I had a regular cola right now or soda, I think I would spit it out because it's so sickening sweet. And that's what sugar has done to us too. It's just made us crave sweeter and sweeter and sweeter things. I just saw that Wendy's has a new fruit pomegranate lemonade that the largest size has more than 100 grams of sugar in it. Can you imagine?
Oh, that's worse than
Oh,
Starbucks drinks that have, upwards of 70 to 75 grams of sugar. I
yeah,
mean, most people only need what, 25, 30 grams of sugar per day?
yeah, yeah, per
And
day,
so
right?
per day. So people get a Wendy's drink like that or a Starbucks venti drink with I call them foo-foo drinks,
Yeah, yeah,
getting double, triple, four times as much sugar in one drink than they need the entire day. What I
yeah.
also find interesting is that the daily minimum requirements for nutrition
Oh,
is based on 2,000 calories per day. However,
right.
the average American consumes 3,600 calories per day.
Yeah,
I and when I tell people track your calories, not just restrict them, just see what you're eating.
right, right.
They're amazed. Restaurants, Cheesecake Factory, I'll mention them by name,
Hmm.
on their menu, they put the number of calories
Oh,
for
yeah, I've seen
unit,
that. Yeah,
which is great. If you look at the salads, which most people think, oh, I'm eating healthy, it's a salad, they can have anywhere from 1,100 to 2,000 calories in one salad because people don't realize the salad dressing, the croutons, the different, sunflower seeds or nuts they put in there.
they probably have some candied things too, like a candied pecan or something like that. So that adds to it. Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's why
That's good advice because yeah, I saw that too. That it's based on a 2,000 calorie. I'm like, yeah, yeah, no.
just out of curiosity, what do you think, how many calories do you think you consume a day?
Wow, that's a really good question. I might have to do that for my own benefit and maybe do a video out of that down the road. I basically just have a Linner, which is about 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the I have coffee in the morning. Sometimes I'll have eggs with it, but most of the time I'm not. And then just a Linner, and then I'll have some kind of light snack around 6, usually macadamia nuts or something along those lines. But I'll have to look at that because I know like macadamia nuts are pretty high calorie, but they're so good for fiber and fat that I love them.
Avocados are excellent too for fat
Yes,
because it's a
yes.
healthy fat.
Yeah, I use avocado oil, and I used to eat a lot more avocados when I was living in California, and I've sort of gotten off that. So I probably should get back onto doing that in the summer when they're really fun in a salad or something like that.
Yeah, because as you mentioned, they're putting sugar in everything, even vegetables now, they're making them sweeter. And bliss point was actually a term coined by Howard Moskowitz.
Yep.
He's in the food industry for 30 years, and he's responsible for Campbell soup varieties, Prego spaghetti sauce varieties, Dr. Pepper varieties. What I found interesting doing research for my books was in the 1990s, the average grocery store had about 35,000, no, about 15,000 um, items on their
Yeah.
shelf.
Yep.
And today it's what, 50, 60,000?
Yeah. Greatly enhanced. Yeah.
And so what I tell people is, I don't know about you or them, but I haven't heard that many new fruits, vegetables, or nuts or berries being discovered in that time period. So what it is, it's all the different flavors of Cheetos, Doritos, and chips. And you're right, when they say bet you can't eat just one, it's not a dare, it's a fact.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, the other thing sort of tied with that is not only are these foods just so much empty calories because they've stripped the fiber out, so yeah, we don't get full, but then we're also mindlessly eating them while we're on our devices or in front of the TV, and then we finish a bag or whatever it was, and we're like, wait, I don't even remember eating this. And so that's the other problem.
Yeah. Um, I stopped eating chicken about a year ago. And my wife's like, why? I said, I was talking to Ocean Robbins about
Mm,
chickens. And when he told me about them, it disturbed me, number one. Then I saw a picture of what a size of a chicken was back in the
yeah.
1940s. And then I saw what it is today. And today the chickens are 4 times larger. We were at the grocery store, my wife and I, and she wanted to get some chicken. And I said, do you know what's in there? And she says, what do you mean? I said, look, the fine print at the bottom on the front of the
Oh
label
yeah.
says 20 to 25% water or vegetable broth added. Why do they need to inject the chicken with extra water or vegetable? Well, because they sell it by the weight,
Yep.
so they want it to weigh more. It's
And that's even under the, by the way, that I've seen that, and that's even under the natural. They have a big sign, natural chicken. So you think, oh, it's all healthy, unless you read the fine print. And yeah, I saw that. It's like, oh my gosh, how is that natural? You know?
here's a funnier story. My mom, we were talking about chicken, and she said, yeah, I went to the grocery store and I bought a package of chicken. She goes, I opened it. I thought there were four breasts in there. There were only two. She goes, David, I didn't even bother cooking it. I threw it out. Now that's my
Wow.
91-year-old mom saying she's not eating it.
Wow. Wow. Well, you know, and it's not, I hate to break the news to you and others, but it's not just chicken. I mean, even beef. They're now slaughtering them much younger than they used to be in the past, and they're fattening up as you know as quickly as possible. Because again, the for all these things, the higher the weight, the more profit they make. And I think it was Robert Lustig who said this in a summit, in a summit I listened to a year ago, that he thinks the marbling that everyone loves in the grain-fed, grain-finished feedlot is actually a sign of the cows being in metabolical distress.
Oh, geez.
And I was like, whoa, don't tell that to the cow industry. But yeah, that's gonna be that was one of my recommendations, you know, for your viewers is that if you can source locally, I still do eat chicken, but I get chickens from I have a person 2 towns away that grows chickens, and they are small. Yeah, the first time I'm like, you know, I could hold it in the palm of my hand. I was like, wait, is this you know, where's the chicken? And it's like, no, this is the way they're supposed to be. And they also, you know, have cows out there, and cows stay in that grass, that pasture until the mobile center comes, and they just, you know, kill the cow right in the pasture, and it's just a wonderful, peaceful thing. Again, not I know vegans will be upset about that, but for those of us who are omnivores, or I just think if you can buy as local as possible, not only is it the food not transported miles and miles and miles, but it's also supporting your local community because these farmers and ranchers. I have another rancher who doesn't sell locally. He sells right to the feedlot, right to the big people, because he says it's just a dependable source. He said they rip me off because they want to give me the lowest dollar for my beef, but I just don't have the resources to sell directly to consumers. And that's one of my little wishes and goals that I'm trying to work on is trying to build a network of local producers and consumers that can work together and buy the healthiest foods.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
I guess the Amish people in Pennsylvania have it the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, back to what you were saying earlier, it's not like we need to reinvent food. We just need to go back in the time machine and bring back the food we were making because that was healthy back then.
I have a new client and he lives in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
We're talking and he was telling me, yeah, I go and I get this and this and this. And I said, no, you don't want to eat that. And he goes, why not? I said, well, it's probably all processed. He goes, no, I buy it from, the Amish. I said, oh, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what he said. He says, yeah, I know. So, it's interesting. Do you work with individuals privately to help them with their health?
No, I've thought about that because I've had a lot of people ask me, but I'm right now just so focused on just trying to get the message out there. I'm trying to amplify your voice and the voice of others that are, Lufkin, Lustig, so many others that are RFK that are finally, it's so exciting to finally, like I said, see what many thought were crackpot ideas. In fact, still today, I am fighting with nutritionists online about when they say, oh, you limit your eggs or watch your cholesterol because you don't want to have a heart attack. And it's like, oh my gosh, we have settled this for so long, but
Well,
good.
I'll play devil's advocate just for the
Okay.
sake of it. I agree in part with them for this reason. I only eat whenever possible organic pasture raised eggs,
Yes.
which are a lot different than store-bought white eggs,
Yes.
a lot different than cage-free or range-free eggs.
Yes.
And if people look at the carton when it says cage-free or range-free, a lot of times they'll say uh, grain-fed or special feed, and that's corn and
Yeah.
soy. And that's what is going into the chicken, which is going into the egg.
Right.
Depending on the egg, it could be unhealthy or healthy.
I, I get it. I get it. That's why I do try to always say pastured eggs or pastured or grain or grass-fed beef because I do 100% agree with that, especially with eggs. I think it's the marketing of eggs should win awards for how confusing they are, cage-free, free-ranging. And I think the vegetarian fed is hilarious because chickens are omnivores. They want to be eating grubs. They want to be pecking in the soil. And so, yeah, I agree. Eggs, I either get it from a local source during the winters when they're a little slower with their egg production. I'll get like Vital Farms organic or something like that, that again are the best quality eggs. But that brings up a really good point I want to make also. There are so many studies that say, meat is bad. And the headline, the clickbait headline, there it is, red meat, stop eating it. And then you look at the study and they lump in things like processed meats into the red meat, and they don't separate out conventional meat versus organic or grass-fed. And so, yeah, same thing. That some of that processed meats, I wouldn't touch that ever, even if it somehow had the organic or natural label on it, because of all the processing done. So you're right. Uh, we have to make sure we use the words or the right adjectives with those words correctly to make sure so it's not just all eggs are healthy or all meat's healthy, because that's certainly not the case. Thank you
Yeah,
for that.
yeah, even with vegetarians who think
Yeah.
they're eating plant-based burgers, is healthy. It's not because of the chemicals used. Nature never intended a plant to look like or taste like meat.
Yeah.
And then you're better off eating the real grass-fed, healthy beef than
Yeah.
that. And um,
You know,
Ocean
I
was, telling me that. He says that I said, how do you distinguish between, plant-based food that's healthy and not? And he goes, we use the term whole plant-based versus plant-based because plant-based means part of the, which is processed.
very interesting because I was just thinking earlier today, this whole plant-based versus animal-based is just such a silly argument. And it's a distraction in my mind from getting to, hey, let's just eat real foods. Because, yeah, like you said, plant-based, someone joked, was it, not a Twinkie, but
Potato,
candy is plant-based or whatever. Yeah, potato chip plant-based, but it doesn't mean it's healthy for you. Now the whole plant-based is interesting. I haven't seen that yet, but that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, if a vegan diet works for you and you're eating all whole fruits and vegetables, fantastic. Find what works for you,
yeah,
but don't. Yeah, but yeah, I had a friend whose daughter decided to go vegan and was eating the fake hot dogs and the fake hamburgers and eating a lot of candy. And so I finally said, I think your daughter is more of a canditarian than it is a vegetarian or a junk foodtarian because, yeah, that's just not healthy. So thank you for that.
yeah. Well, also, in talking with people, I talked to two vegans who had to go back to eating meat because that's what their body required. They were sick and they couldn't figure out why, and they finally figured out they needed to eat beef.
Yeah, I have a friend who actually is a nutritionist, and she got Lyme disease decades ago, and it was misdiagnosed for 20 something years. And they finally did the blood test and finally confirmed it. And they said, oh, you need to go on a vegetarian or a vegan diet to do this. And she ended up like down to 75, 80 pounds and sicker than ever. And finally, someone said, just try carnivore and see what happens. And she went on and just she just is wild game or beef, nothing else, and grass-fed beef, of course. And she's the healthiest she's ever been. So again, yes, find the diet that your body, brain, gut wants.
Yeah,
That's the most important thing.
yeah. The other thing is I laugh when I talk to some friends or people and I watch what they're eating. Um, Winston Churchill had a quote where he said, I no longer listen to what people say, I watch what they do. And so when it comes to food, I never listen to what people say about being healthy. I just watch what they eat. I had a friend and he ordered a glass of orange juice and a bagel
Oh,
at breakfast. And I said, why are you ordering? He goes, it's healthy. So what do you mean it's healthy? He goes, orange juice is healthy. I said, no, it's not. He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, it takes 4 to 8 medium oranges to make a glass of orange juice. It's all sugar. Would you eat 4 to 8 oranges at one time? He says, no. I said, well, that's how much sugar you're putting in your body at one time. You're better off at just eating the whole orange.
yep.
And I said, I'm not even going to get into why a bagel's not healthy. I said, if you want to enjoy, just don't tell me it's healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I think we both raised this in our books, that this whole idea also of breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It was a marketing gimmick from a cereal company.
It was
Oh,
Kellogg's and
big,
Puffs and General Mills, actually.
yeah, General Mills, yeah. And so I think this idea of everyone creating a food diary just for a week or something like that, so it's not super taxing, but just write down everything they're eating because I think again, a lot of it is mindless where we just reach for a snack while we're, whatever, and a lot of times people are eating when they're really thirsty because a lot of us are chronically dehydrated, so they think they're hungry when they're really just thirsty. So I think that doing a diary might be extremely eye-opening. I would also, with that, do a ingredients diary or whatever. So start looking at the ingredients label, and you also will be kind of shocked by, like you said earlier, it's not just 5 ingredients in there. It's bizarre things you never would imagine, and including 3 different names for sugar that you never even knew existed.
Yeah, I think they're up to 266 names for sugar now.
Something ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Where can people get your book or books?
All 3 are on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Probably the best ones. They might be in some local bookstores, but mostly those 2 online. And the first 2 books, Triumph Over Trauma and Heal, are both on audio. I haven't gotten around yet to deciding about the Healing Revolution diet being audio. It's kind of hard when you have recipes and things like that in it to do it that way.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your information and being a guest on the Aging Backwards Summit today.
I greatly appreciate it because, again, David, I just love how aligned we are. And again, just look at you. I mean, you're the poster child for this. So thank you.
I
Thank you for
like to
having
lead
me.
by example.
Yeah.
I do not as I say.
Yeah. Perfect. Perfect.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Hanson. Thank you, Randall.
Thank you, David.